I pulled out my handy dandy handheld microscope. Now we're seeing, and I've done videos on microscope probes, and they're excellent. They'll test end face analysis for reporting. But, you know, I always say that having a nice, inexpensive handheld microscope, it's like a doctor having a stethoscope. That's the first thing they purchase. This is what we need to have. And they come in different powers. We sell 200 power, which I find to be sufficient. We can get some 400s that we have. Some of them have rocker switches where we can switch between the two. If you'll look here, this adapter is for a 2.5 mil ferrule. So what ferrules fit in here? STs, SCs, and FCs. In the pouch that this comes with, comes a second adapter, and that would be obviously for your 1.25 ferrules. So, you know, most commonly your LCs, but you also have your MU connectors that use that size. So we would just screw that on the end. Something I want to point out about this, I mean, it's very basic. When I use it, I like to hold the connector in with my hand so it doesn't move as I focus. And we have a light here. This will turn the light on. And one of the things I want to point out, it's kind of a nice feature that you don't see in a probe scope, is when we turn the light on, if you can view that light right there, that light, this is what we call coaxial lighting. So we're lighting the fiber, the end face, from the front, from the top. So the light's coming straight down on the fiber. And it's great, and most people use this. When we're looking at end faces, a lot of times you'll be able to see the core and the cladding, especially on short cables, because the other end of the cable, the open end, is picking up ambient light from the room. And you'll see the difference between the core and cladding. On a very long cable, you'll see just one, it looks like a single piece of glass, like a grayish colored fiber, and you won't be able to distinguish between the core and the cladding. Again, the cable's so long that it's not picking up light, and that's why it's looking like a single piece of glass. I had a customer call once, and they said, we have a problem, we're splicing pigtails, I think it was our SOC connectors, our splice-on connectors, and he said, I'm having an issue. He said, I look at them in the microscope, and the core's there, and as soon as I splice them, the core falls out of the fiber. So that's the first time, the only time I'd ever heard that one. The core wasn't falling out of the fiber. He was splicing it to such a long cable that core wasn't illuminating. So a nice feature on these, and a lot of people don't realize this, is if I turn this light off, and instead of just pressing it to turn, again, the coaxial light on, if I hold it, if you'll look, that light should switch to a different view. That view is called oblique lighting. This is really nice, especially on these longer cables. Now you'll be able to see the core is going to look black, and then the cladding is going to look gray, and no matter how long the cable is, we'll still be able to distinguish the core and the cladding from each other. That's a nice little feature, and those of you that make probe scopes might want to even think about that feature in one of your newer scopes. But this can be a very handy little feature. One of the things that I noticed, a quick little human interest story, is we had sold a handful of stock patch cores to a customer, and he was concerned. He said, there's damage on the ends, and so I went down and looked at a batch of these connectors, because of the same batch we still had some in stock, and every one of them looked fine. I was using this scope in my hands. I said to the salesperson that brought me down, I said, let's switch to this other view, this oblique view. And lo and behold, there was a ring around the outside of the core of the fiber. So it was outside the core, but inside the cladding. And basically what had happened, and it just happened, the new fiber that Corning designed, multi-mode, they call it clear curve. For the single mode, I mentioned it in another training, it's called single mode ultra. That's that layer that makes that cable take more bending, or the low bend loss cable. So that ridge is what makes your cable your low bend loss cable. And you can't view that on the coaxial view, but you can actually see it. And it was a great thing because we had switched over to all the bend and sensitive fiber. So another handy dandy little hint. I hope this helps. And make sure that if your technicians don't have a probe, at least they have their stethoscope of the fiber world, which is your handheld microscope. Thanks again.